Now we're going to talk about how to turn a plan into a draft if you opted for the bubble map, which is a pretty popular one, so I imagine this video is for a lot of you. Bubble maps are nice because you can get all your ideas down pretty fast and you don't have to think as you're making your plan about the sequence or necessarily how things will be grouped into paragraphs, which if you did a formal outline, that might be a little bit more apparent to you. But that's okay. I like bubble maps a lot because it allows me to get all my ideas down quickly. But the flip side of that is it takes a little bit more thought process later when you get to drafting. Because we need to talk about number 1 and number 2 here. We need to consider how that plan is going to translate into paragraphs and determine the sequence or order of your composition. So what order are you going to put things in? So when you have an outline, things are already in order, and if you have a plot pyramid, things are already in order. But if you have a bubble map, it's going to look something like this, right? So there's no apparent order to it. So you kind of have to look back and decide that now. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so with a bubble map, if we're trying to look for paragraphs first, which is what step 1 says here, here's one way to do it. At least to start. Now, later on when we get into revision, you might find that you're breaking this down into smaller paragraphs, and that's fine. But what I like to do with a bubble map is whatever my initial instincts were for major ideas, that is everything that's coming directly off of the center. Okay, so when I did the center of my map, I wrote basically what the topic of my story is the story of when I lost my dog. So that's the center. How many lines do I have coming directly off of that? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So for now, I am going to say that each of these offshoots is going to be its own paragraph. Now some of these offshoots have a lot of offshoots coming off of them. So I might find later on that I am going to break, like for instance this one, which has a lot going on here. I might decide later that I'm going to break that up into more than one paragraph, or this one, for example. Maybe. But remember, this is a rough draft, so we don't want to get too hung up on that yet. We're just going to take a look at it and break it down into manageable pieces, get out a draft, and then later on we can make changes. So I am drawing on a computer with a trackpad, so it's going to look really bad, so forgive me for that. So I'm going to say these are the paragraphs. Now, step 2 on here says to determine the sequence or the order. So if I have 4 paragraphs, I'm going to decide right now what order I think that they're going to go in. And then I'm going to run with that plan. And then if I run into issues, I can change them as I go, or I can change them later on in revision. So, lost my dog. This offshoot here just says chomp chomp. And then this is all information about my dog. Okay? What is this? This one here, it says I had a baby. So this would be a paragraph all about how I had a baby. And this offshoot is that I realized one day he's gone. Okay, so this is where he goes missing. And then this last one is where I found him. So I know that these are going to be probably 3 and 4 for the paragraphs. Now I can decide which order I want to put these in. Do I want to start my story by introducing my dog and telling my reader all about him, including the important information about, his traits that are specific to why he ran away? Or do I want to start by talking about how I had a baby and how all of that maybe affected my dog, and then the paragraph after that I could talk about his tendencies and traits? So I have some creative decision making to do here. I think I'm just going to try it this way. I'm going to start by talking about having a baby, and then I'm going to go on next to talk about my dog. So I'm going to label this 1, and it looks not very much like a 1, but I've done my best. It's getting better. Okay, I'm going to label this one 2. I'm going to label this one 3 when he gets lost. Obviously that has to come before finding him, which will be number 4. So when it's time for you to do this, I want you to literally go back to your plan and draw on it, okay? And if it helps you to see things more clearly, you know, you could draw a big circle around all of this information to show you this is all 1, this is all 2. You could use a highlighter if you prefer to highlight things. That's probably what I would do if I weren't working on a computer. And I have highlighters to lend if you need to borrow any. And this is 4. So I want you to write on your plan so that it's visually very clear to you what your plan of attack is. Okay? So now that I've done this, I've done steps 1 and 2. Okay? Don't worry yet about 3. I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video that you're going to watch, which is to determine how your mentor text is going to influence how you draft. Right now, I'm just going to worry about getting my ideas from this sort of visual into actual sentences and paragraphs. So I might as well start from the top. So I'm going to start with this paragraph up here, which the first statement I put here is that I had a baby. Okay. Then I have a few different offshoots from that. I have that I got very busy, I got kind of forgetful, I had less time for my dog. Okay. Then I have another offshoot over here. My dog is waking up the baby with his barking, so he gets sent outside a lot. And then finally I have my husband returns to work. So next I can kind of decide what order do I want to put these ideas in. Okay. Let's say I'll label them A, B, and C. I'm going to say probably actually the order that I read them to you in. I'm going to say that this is first. This idea comes first. This idea comes second. And again, I might change this later. That's what revision's all about. We don't have to worry too much about it now. We just have to have something to run with to start. So I have A, B, and C. Hard to read, but that's what it says. So I first need a statement talking about how I had a baby. And that could be a good catch too, right? If you want to start a story with some sort of catch, okay? Or a hook, I'm trying to say. Not a catch, a hook. Okay, so let's start here. I'll say last summer, for the first time in my life. Ooh, that's a good hook. I had a baby. Okay. So the next idea I wanted to talk about is that made me super busy. Okay, this made me busier than I've ever been in my life. Because I was, because I was so busy, I was often very forgetful and I had less time than ever. I'll say less time than ever for my dog. I'm already starting to think that maybe I should have put the other paragraph first, but that's okay. I'm going to run with what I've got just to get my ideas down on paper, so to speak, or in this case in the computer. And then later on, I'll show you in revision how I can change this up, okay? But it's okay. It's good that I'm having those thoughts now, and I can acknowledge them, and I can keep moving forward. If it's really catching me up, then I can stop and start over. But I'm going to keep going to show you that later I can make those changes, okay? So because I was so busy, I was often very forgetful and had less time than ever for my dog. Okay. To make matters worse, my dog often woke my baby up with his barking, so he spent a lot of time outside. And finally, the last part that I had was about my husband returning to work. After a few weeks, my husband had burned through his vacation time. I almost did it again. Vacation time, and had to return to work. Okay, so it says, let's read it. Last summer, for the first time in my life, I had a baby. This made me busier than I've ever been in my life. Because I was so busy, I was often very forgetful, and I had less time than ever for my dog. To make matters worse, my dog often woke my baby up with his barking, so he spent a lot of time outside. After a few weeks, my husband had burned through his vacation time and had to return to work. So it's not the most interesting paragraph in the universe, and it's kind of interesting that I start mentioning my dog here and there without really having introduced him. So that's why as I started writing, I thought, you know what, maybe my first paragraph should have been the one that I labeled paragraph 2, where I talked about my dog first, okay? But that's okay. The important part is that I got all of my ideas from this grouping up here. I already got all of that into sentence and paragraph form. Okay, I have something to work with. Later on, I can go in and switch the order of the paragraphs, and I can go in, and I'm going to show you later how to do this, add a lot more interesting descriptions and language in here to make it interesting to read. Right now, it's sort of like a report. It's very informational. There's not a lot of feeling to it, right? There's not a lot of sensory experiences that you're having when you read it. So I'm going to show you later how to add all of that. But this is the step that you're working on right now. Simply turning this format into this format.